Rabbi, my life will begin when, and there was this dot, dot, dot. Life would begin when I find love. Life will begin when I get this job. Life will begin when we have enough money to buy this home. Life will begin when certain things fall into place, and then life will finally begin. And I spent so much time as a rabbi counseling people and meditating on that human problem. How come we spend so much time thinking that life will begin at some further time when this is what we've got? Today is what we've got. And I really tried so hard to counsel people about that, about this is the day, this is our life. Even if you're not living the life that you dreamed of, how can we embrace today in the best way possible? In any case, that's what I spent a lot of my time doing. And then I was a wife, I was a mother of two children, and when our daughter was about 2 or 3 years old, she was diagnosed with a fatal degenerative disorder. And as you can imagine, life stopped. I stopped teaching, I stopped preaching, I stopped traveling, I stopped writing. In all honesty, I couldn't quite figure out what to pray anymore. And I found myself inside waiting rooms. I found myself inside the waiting rooms of doctors and all sorts of tests. And also I found myself inside the waiting rooms of every kind of therapist that I could get my hands on. Physical therapist, speech therapist, equestrian therapy, swimming therapy, you name the therapy, we were doing it. And at a certain time, I was looking at my life and realized that I had actually become one of the people that I'd been counseling all my years as a rabbi. That here I was living inside waiting rooms, and the doctors were telling us that it would probably be 7-year wait before we would find out if our daughter was going to get progressively weaker, or if what she had was more of a static condition and that she would learn ways to compensate and that she'd be okay. And so I realized I had just, my whole life was a metaphor for a waiting room, and I had become one of the people waiting for life to begin. And I don't know if I should be taking questions along the way or take little pauses. I will get to some questions. I'm going to talk a little bit more, and then I'll address some of your questions. So after this book, Hope Will Find You, came out, Hope Will Find You actually traces that 7-year journey in our family's life. And when the book came out, I was being interviewed, and the journalist asked me, she said, "So how did you ever get out of the waiting room?" And I was thinking about what she said, and I realized something, that for me, the only way out was in. And I think it's probably true for all of us, that the only way out is through. And for me, it involved embracing the wait, and it involved seeing blessings in the very place that I didn't want to be. For example, waiting rooms themselves, which I used to dread. I'm sitting in an office with fluorescent lights right now, but just those sterile fluorescent waiting rooms, and just didn't want to be there. And then I realized that the waiting room itself was this place, this community of parents with children with disabilities, and that we became sources of wisdom for one another, that we were community, that the children in the waiting rooms weren't different, that every child had a different type of special need, but there they were all included, they were all beautiful, they were all perfect. Whereas in the typical world, so often we parents and our children felt excluded. which is something obviously I'm going to touch upon. It's just the whole question of inclusion in the Jewish community. I guess I can just touch upon it. Just one story that just kind of sticks out in my mind is a dear colleague of mine who told me that there was a family in his synagogue's day school that told him that they were pulling their child from the day school. And, they explain, our child has special needs and the child, he doesn't feel welcome. He's just totally socially isolated. And they decided it was time to just put the kid in a public school, to put the child in a public school. And they moved their child to a public school. And all of a sudden, this very same child is being asked on play dates, is getting calls, is being invited to things. And the mother of this child asked, one of the other parents who started inviting her child to all these events, saying, what's going on? I mean, we were in this other school and our child was totally isolated. What's happening? And the other mother said to her, well, it's the Christian thing to do. And when I heard that story, it completely broke my heart, because we know that it's the Jewish thing to do, obviously. And certainly, Shelley and all these amazing foundations are doing amazing work in opening the gates of Torah and inclusion, but there's clearly more work to be done. That it should be that out of every parent's tongue, every Jewish parent's tongue, it should say it's the Jewish thing to do, to include adults and children in every way, and to see people with disabilities, all disabilities, as assets to our community, not sources of compassion and not sources of pity, but actually sources of light and of teaching. So back to me in my waiting room, I started to see that there were mentors everywhere. It could be a clerk in a store or a homeless man on the street, and each one of them was teaching me a lesson. Another thing that happened for me was teachings that I had known my whole life, biblical verses that I had known my whole life, and they kind of just washed over me as just things that I took for granted, suddenly had a depth and a meaning that I never understood before. So just as a simple example, I grew up in the Orthodox community. I went to yeshiva, I went to Orthodox summer camp, and certainly like one of the songs we always sing at Shabbos table is like, Ko Amar, Ko Hashem, Matzachem B'Amiva, so it's from Prophet Jeremiah, saying, thus says the Lord, you will find grace in the wilderness. And it never meant anything to me except the song that you clapped to, or you pounded your fist on the table singing that song. But to me, what it means to be able to find grace in the wilderness, what it means to understand that the Bible, that God, that the prophets are speaking to us words of comfort, and that it's possible to find grace, beauty, miracles, even in the place that's less than perfect, even the place you wish you weren't there, just as our people found Torah in the wilderness, that's a gift, that's a blessing. By far, the greatest mentor of them all was my daughter Noah, is my daughter Noah, in the scheme of dealing with disabilities. Both my children are mentors. In terms of dealing with disabilities, certainly my daughter Noah has been a great mentor to me. And I know that one of the questions that I received earlier was, how do you pray when the situation isn't going to change? How do you pray when you know your child has a diagnosis of autism, or that they'll never be able to walk? Or what does prayer mean in that situation? And as I said, here I was a rabbi, and I wasn't really sure what to pray. I mean, should I be praying to God to make this all go away? Well, I didn't necessarily believe that God had given this to my child, so why would God make it go away? Is that God's job? I'm not really sure. I don't necessarily believe that. So I just remember one day when Noah was in about second grade, she woke up and she had a terrible bout of ataxia. Ataxia is a condition that our daughter has where you can't keep your balance. And sometimes her ataxia would be very pronounced. And on this particular day, she couldn't even sit up in a chair without falling over. She would just sit and fall over. So I had to kind of hold her up and spoon feed her breakfast. And she was going to a Jewish day school at the time. And I looked at her and I said, honey, I don't think you can go to school today. Because how can you send your child to school when she can't sit up? And she looked at me and she said, no, Mom, I'm going to school. And she said, I'm going to pray and you'll see it's going to be okay. And I didn't even know what to say to that. So the next thing I knew, Noah was holding on to the table, and then she walked to the wall, and she was walking herself with her hands to the wall. She made her way to her own bedroom, and then she was holding on to the dresser in her bedroom, and I just stayed back because I didn't want to impose or to get in her way, and I actually wanted to see what she was going to do. And the next thing I knew, she just started to sing and to pray all the prayers she knew, the Moda Ani and the Shema and Aleinu. She was just praying everything she knew. And as I was standing in the hallway looking on, all I can tell you is that it seemed as if a pillar, like a marble pillar of strength, was rising up inside of her. And her expression changed, her posture changed, everything changed. And when she was done praying, she walked toward me with perfect grace and balance. And she said, I'm ready to go to school. And she was. Now, what did Noah teach me that day? Did she teach me that with prayer we can change a diagnosis or cure every cancer or cure every disability? Of course not. But what she was teaching me was that we all have the power to pray for strength and to receive that strength. And I realized that was a very important lesson, that God works through us and that prayer works through us. So I guess the last thing I wanted to say about Noah was that that years passed, and it became clear to me that that even though for years I've been afraid to even think about her bat mitzvah because I was worried, would she even be alive or would she be in a wheelchair? Now I saw that she wasn't getting weaker, and that not only would she have a bat mitzvah, but that I would have the honor not only of being there at her bat mitzvah, but of teaching her myself. So every night we started this tradition that I would crawl into bed with her and we would study. And yes, she has learning disabilities, but we would study. And we studied Torah Chop and Haftarah Chop, and we studied the meanings of the different prayers and the melodies. And her Haftarah was one of the beautiful Haftarahs of comfort from the prophet Isaiah. And one night I looked at her and I said, so tell me, what do you think this Haftarah means to you? And she said to me, she said, Mom, I think it means that if you don't like your life, if you try really hard you can find hope. And then Noah stopped for a minute, and then she did a double take, and she kind of rolled her eyes and she said, "No, Mom, hope will find you." And when Noah said that, I literally couldn't breathe. I just couldn't breathe anymore. And I it just sounded like a biblical verse. Here, this the mother of this child had been trying for so long to hang on to hope, to seek out hope, to find hope. And here my daughter was telling me that I didn't need to try so hard or hold on with such intensity, that what I really needed to do was to relax and let go and let hope in. That maybe that's the art in life altogether, is to stop long enough and open up wide enough to let hope in. And I realized that the verse reminded me of something biblical, because it reminded me of the 23rd Psalm, which we say all the time. Ach tov v'chesed yirdifuni kol yemei chayai. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life. It's not such a great translation. It really is surely goodness and mercy will chase after me, will pursue me all the days of my life. And I think that that's what Noah was teaching me, is that all those things, goodness, mercy, hope, all those things are there searching for us if we allow them in. So for now, I'm going to look at some of the questions that have come here, and what more should Jewish institutions be doing to help? It would be my dream, my prayer, that every Jewish school, whether it's an afternoon religious school or a day school, or the Jewish schools of higher learning, invest money and seek out grants to have a track for inclusion for children with special needs, and that be a priority for Jewish summer camps, Jewish schools, Jewish institutions, to make inclusion a priority and really take it seriously, so that it won't just be, and that we pool our resources so that every family who wants to get a Jewish education can do it in a way that is inclusive, that they feel that they're being part of the Jewish community. What teachings would you recommend to Jewish educators that would lead to greater acceptance and inclusion of people with disabilities? Well, we say, every time we pray Sim Shalom, we say, Bachenu Avinu, Kulanu Ke'echad B'or Panecha. Bless us, our Creator, our God. We are all as one in your light. In God's light, we're one. Unfortunately, in our eyes, we see differences. That's one of our disabilities as human beings, is we tend to see differences. But if we can see with God's eyes, if we can realize that we're created in God's image and that God's very presence is residing inside of us, that we can take that line, that sentence, and bring it to life. Kulanu ke'echad b'or panecha, that we all are one in God's light. And I guess there were many verses like that, like in Hallel, Even Masu Habonim Haital Rosh Pinah, the stone that the builders discarded has become the cornerstone. And how often have we all seen that the one that we overlooked, the one who was quiet, the one who seemed to be on the outside, really was the cornerstone of this classroom, the cornerstone of this community, and to just teach what that verse really means. And again, from Song of Songs, there's this verse where God, the lover, is reaching out to the beloved, Hashmiini et kolech, Let me hear your voice, for your voice is sweet. And I think people with disabilities often feel frightened and timid to speak out, to speak up. And the whole idea of not only engaging the community, but engaging the families of people with disabilities and people with disabilities altogether in a process of speaking out, of really treasuring your voice and knowing that your voice is important. There's another one. It's with the prophet Elisha. He's talking to a widow who feels that she has no hope and she has no money and she has nothing. And he looks at her and he just asks her, Ma yeshlach b'bayit, tell me, what do you have around the house? And she said, I have nothing but this tiny little pitcher of oil. And he said, well, bring the pitcher. And we start borrowing other utensils from your neighbors. And the miracle happens that the oil keeps flowing. The oil just keeps multiplying. But I love that lesson. Just what do you have around the house? In other words, what blessings do you already have? What skills do you already have? Play to your own strengths. Those of you who are participating, who have disabilities, know what your strengths are and play to them. And don't be shy about fighting for your voice and fighting for your rights and teaching the community what you're capable of offering. In the Talmud, it's a very beautiful scene where a rabbi comes upon a blind man who's carrying a torch. And the rabbi says to the blind man, the man has a cane and a torch. And the rabbi says to him, what are you carrying a torch for? What good's a torch? You could see the torch? It's a night. And the blind man says, I'm carrying the torch so that others can see me and help me. So the truth is, we all need to be carrying a torch of some sort, so that people know where are the areas that we need help. What are the areas that we need more help with? And we can all be sources of help to one another, to guide one another through those times and places of uncertainty and the places of the fog, because we're all in there. We're all in there. Were there other? Yes. How there's a question about the cutbacks in healthcare and how the Jewish community can step up to provide services. I wish I knew more about how the Jewish community can help to provide services. There's a lot of, thank God, a lot of money in the Jewish community, and certain foundations are doing an enormous amount to help in the field of disabilities. But I wish I could tell you more. I don't. I hope that perhaps this question, we'll pose it to Shelley at JDown, and maybe she'll be able to give us a little bit more information about what we can do. Another person asked where's Noah today? So I can tell you a little bit about that. She is 18 years old, and she does have significant learning disabilities. She goes to a high school for students with learning disabilities. She's a senior, and she plans on going to college. She's already gotten in to Cal State Northridge, and she's gotten into Marymount College, and she's gotten into one other college. I'm trying to think what it is. Cal State Channel Islands. My dream is that more and more universities, Jewish universities, will offer the kinds of inclusive services that a school like Marymount has, that has a whole track for students with learning disabilities. It saddens me that the Catholics are ahead of us much ahead of us in this. And I pray that the Jewish universities will offer a track like this that would enable students to study and to be in a Jewish environment. Noah, participates fully in her school. She's been in the school musical, and even with her physical limitations, she's on the school volleyball team. She's on the school softball team. And she also, just by coincidence, she volunteers one day each week at the organization that last year's Elaine Hall, whose book was the book for JDAM Reads last year, founded, called the Miracle Project. Noah volunteers every Monday at the Miracle Project, which is an organization that offers great musical arts, performing arts for teens in the autism spectrum. And Noah just finds so much inspiration from the students there, and she loves working there and volunteering there. So I want to thank you all for being here. And I guess one other thing I would want to say is, in the Jewish community, we value learning and we value success. And actually, my husband wrote a piece just last week in the Jewish Journal about this, about, those are the measures that parents like to boast about, where did my child get into college, or how smart is my child? And, we're a community that those values have served us well. They've enabled us to assimilate and to succeed in this country and all over the world. So it's why we're people of the book, we're people of learning, we're people who values hard work. But we also have to be a people that values kindness and compassion. And to be able to be a parent, to boast and say, I've raised a kind child. I think to have that be part of the curricula of every one of our programs, curricula of kindness and inclusion. So I thank you, and Hashem Yimachem, may God be with you. Take care. Oh, wait. Oh, I have one other thing. I think my book. I wanted to read you a prayer that I wrote, if it's okay with you. Is that okay with you? What are you going to say? No? It's a prayer for parents of children with special needs. Okay? Say okay. So I just have to find it. If you give me like 1 second. Here we go. Help me, God, to embrace my child as he is. Teach me how to raise him in love and joy and confidence. Show me how to help him realize all the gifts you have placed inside him. Prevent me from pressuring him to become what he can never be or does not want to be. When I find myself mourning for what he is not, open my eyes to the holy blessing that he is. When feelings of jealousy surface toward other parents, soften my heart, open my soul. When my patience wears thin, calm me with your comforting presence. When I feel as if I have no more to give, be my strength, God, abiding and unending. When I hover over my child too closely, remind me to step back and make room for him to fly. If he should fail, teach me how to encourage him to try again. When others are cruel to him, place words of wisdom and comfort on my tongue, and place fortitude in his heart. Help him, God. Watch over him. Protect him from harm. Shield him from frustration and hurt. Fill him with pride, God. Teach him to stand up for himself. Grant him good health. Bless him with true and enduring friends. Nurture his awesome potential, God. Let it flourish and become manifest. Let him be happy, God. Surround him with your love. I thank you, God, for giving me this very child. He is a gift of God, a precious child, a rare soul, a miracle. He is mine. Amen. Somebody wrote in and said, Noah is not only a kind and compassionate person, she's also a wonderful and published writer. And she's part of actually a creative writing workshop called Write Girl in Los Angeles. And through Write Girl has published a book called You Are Here. And I think you can get it on Amazon. And Noah has a piece that they selected in there. They actually named a chapter after a piece that she wrote. So you can search for her there. And with that, I thank you for participating and wish you all good things. Take care.